Across 1,000 years of war, loyalty, migration, faith, and survival, one family moved through the shifting landscapes of medieval Europe and the emerging Atlantic world. From Norman courts to Celtic frontiers, from royal service to colonial hardship, the Payne family stood at the crossroads of history. You are listening to Domesday to America, a prosopographical history of the Payne family from the early Middle Ages to the Atlantic world.
Welcome to In Depth with Academia. I'm Richard Price, CEO of Academia.edu, and I'm really glad you're here for another deep dive into academic research that's shaping the way we think about history, science, the big questions. Today we're going to explore a paper by Patrick Payn, and wow, it's a fascinating ride through genetics, medieval documents, a little bit of detective work, and believe it or not, a lot of people named Payn. And as always, I just want to remind you, my job here is to present the research neutrally, so I'm not saying this paper is the last word, just that it offers food for thought, cool ideas, and a bit of inspiration. Let's start by getting to the heart of the matter. What's the big question Patrick Payn is asking? Why does it matter to you? Or, honestly, to anyone not knee-deep in dusty parish records? Well, at the core, the paper tackles something called the Payn problem. It's kind of this major headache for anyone who's ever tried tracing a family tree or understanding how surnames connect people across places and centuries. The basic challenge? Payn is a super common name, and it pops up all over medieval England in multiple spellings and forms. Payn, Fitzpayn, you name it. So how do you know whether people with the same surname from different counties or even continents are actually related, or whether they just coincidentally share a name? And you might be thinking, why should I care about whether two Payn families in 14th century East Anglia and Sussex are actually cousins? But imagine if you've ever been curious about where your own family came from, or if you've ever felt those mysteries about identity, lineage, or, I don't know, how people and names move through generations. This isn't just about one family. It's about mobility, migration, and the deep roots, biological and social, that connect people over centuries. So let's talk methods, because, like, tracing medieval kinship isn't as easy as firing up Ancestry.com and plugging in birth dates. Payn lays out this multi-pronged convergent approach for untangling the web. He combines four major tools. You've got documentary genealogy, so scouring all kinds of medieval records, leases, court rolls, property deeds, stuff like that. Prosopography, which is basically group biography, where you look at clusters of people who interact or serve the same lords. Cautious heraldic comparison, so comparing coats of arms but with skepticism because those could be, borrowed or made up. And then modern Y-chromosome DNA testing. Together, these let him triangulate, check if multiple lines of evidence point to the same conclusion about family relationships. And this isn't old-school genealogy, where you just assume anyone who shares a surname must be kin. Nope. Payn is super careful about the pitfalls. Surnames, especially a common one like Payn, could belong to totally unrelated dudes who happen to be, say, tenants in the same lord's house, or clerks in some big bureaucratic operation. There's even stuff he calls surname magnets, so big institutions that attract people and then scatter their names across the country. If you're not careful, you can connect dots that just shouldn't be connected, and that's something I think anyone can relate to. How often do we see patterns where none exist, or try to draft a neat origin story for ourselves because it just feels better than saying, it's complicated. Anyway, sorry, I'm getting philosophical here. My coffee's probably kicking in. Right, so what did Payn actually find? Well, ultimately, his cautious thesis. Gotta stress, this is his proposal, not proven truth with a capital T, is that many of the Payn families analysed likely descend from an ancient Celtic paternal lineage, rooted in the British Isles and later woven into Norman and English elite circles as the centuries go by. He's not saying there was a single Lord Payn who rode in with William the Conqueror and fathered everyone. Nothing neat like that. Instead, the genetic evidence suggests these Payns were locals who, through landholding, service, or just good old upward mobility, became part of the Anglo-Norman system. by cross-referencing the 4 evidence streams, so documents, prosopography, heraldry, and DNA, and crucially, assigning confidence levels to every proposed link, he avoids the fantasy of a perfect family tree. No wishful genealogy, as he puts it. The point is to stabilize the story, not to polish it until it shines. And that's a great takeaway for anyone interested in family research. Use every tool, respect the ambiguities. For listeners, here's what's cool. This model shows how a family name can migrate, adapt, and survive, sometimes splitting off, sometimes reconnecting, all the while carrying echoes of biological kinship and social mobility. If you've got a common name, or even if you don't, you realize that the story is rarely linear, and mixing old records with new science is a way forward, not a magic bullet, but a discipline. DNA isn't some oracle. It's, well, a constraint and a clue. Wrapping up, what does this all mean for you? Even if you're not a Payn, the approach gives a roadmap for tracing identities, family stories, or just making sense of the complex, beautiful mess that is human history. And again, just to be super clear, I'm not saying Payn's arguments are gospel, I'm just walking you through an intriguing journey. Alright, that about does it for today. Thanks for joining me on In Depth with Academia, and remember, academic research isn't about absolutes. It's about exploring questions together. Until next time, keep asking, keep wondering, and hey, maybe check your family tree for a surprise.
If you have ever wondered how a single lineage can illuminate the rise of kingdoms, the fall of dynasties, the migrations of peoples, and the endurance of identity across continents, you are in the right place. Welcome to the journey.